This is after the Lord has been he's been killed, he's resurrected,
Right,
and
because
he
after
goes.
the execution, after the crucifixion of Jesus, all the disciples kind of go back to their lives. Right, they're like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I really don't know what to do now."
and let's
The
put one
fishermen went,
right.
"Well, let's go back to work."
And this is the part where I broke this down earlier about why it couldn't have been James and couldn't have been Peter, why they weren't the disciple that Jesus loved, because it specifically mentions Peter
Right.
throughout the book. And then of course we talked about the James dying earlier and John living much longer.
Hmm.
Uh, Jesus didn't promise in that time, and I mentioned that a little earlier. He didn't promise that John was going to live together, but it would be very unusual for him to say, "If I want him to stay alive until I return, what's that to you?" And then him be the first disciple to die.
Right.
So that kind of takes against that. Church history will tell us that he lived to be about 90 years old
Hmm.
and is the last surviving apostle. Um, it also, like we mentioned before, early church tradition. So throughout all the traditions of all the years, this is one of those things where I talk about this homework's already been done, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Uh, Jesus was by the early church unanimously agreed and identified John as the disciple Jesus loved.
Yeah.
John seemed to have a closer relationship with Jesus than the other disciples.